Hello everyone, welcome to this video on how to make a hand line for controlled burning through the woods. This video contains quite a few photos from burns that I've been on over my career, and it has some short videos as well. Hopefully this video will show you the broad range of situations in which a hand line through the woods can look. This one's kind of extreme. We've got a lot of exposed rocks. And this is the first burn that I ever was the burn boss on. And I had a lot of crew. I had an AmeriCorps crew of like 14 people or something that I had been training for a couple months on chainsaw and leaf blowers and all the different things about ecological management. And then I had a bunch of professional staff. This was when I worked at the conservation department. And this is at Grand Bluffs Conservation Area. There's the Missouri River in the background. This is the property boundary, and this is the fire line. You can see we blew all the leaves out to bare mineral soil, and then we trimmed the trees, branches, so that we can walk through here. And if possible, we trim it so that we can drive equipment through, like a four-wheeler or a UTV with a water unit. But you can see we've got a lot of big stones and we couldn't drive the equipment down here, so we just trimmed it out so that we could walk through it. And one thing I'll mention is that we've got some aerial fuel right here. We've got a cedar tree that was cut down, and we cut the top off because it was in the fire line. But we didn't take care of the rest of this. And that's because we had been doing forest thinning, woodland restoration in this 30 acres of hillside that's not in the photo. And there was a lot of fuel on the ground. And so we did kind of the bare minimum. Nowadays, this is unacceptable for me, and I would definitely get rid of this. And also, I had a big work crew, so we could go slow and really babysit this stuff. Nowadays, I don't work with a big work crew, and if we had to slow down and babysit big stuff like this a lot, we wouldn't be getting a lot of burning done. We can take care of that stuff before the burn so that when the day of the burn comes, we don't have high risk. We can be more confident. Stuff like this really breaks my confidence when I see it on the burn line the day of the burn. I've showed up on quite a few burns that weren't mine, they just needed help, and so I come out and help, and then I see this stuff, and it really breaks my confidence. I like to get that stuff cleaned out. And another thing is this fire burned pretty hot, and that's how I was trained. All my colleagues were doing hot fires, and that was the standard. And I don't do these hot fires anymore. I really try to avoid them. They can really scorch and even kill the big trees, and I don't like to see any scorch on these trees. The last thing I want to do is stress out the trees that I'm trying to keep. I want these guys to be growing really well the year after the burn. And there's research that shows that they can if they're not stressed out. That the year after the burn, they will actually grow more than they did the year before the burn because they've got all these new nutrients on the ground that the fire has released for them. Okay, and I included this photo of my son, and he was probably 4 years old in this photo, maybe 3. And I included this photo because I encourage everybody to get children on the fire line. Maybe not necessarily this young, but we're at grandma's house, and I've got other adults around that can help watch him. And we're also doing a small area, and so it's not like I had to leave him. I was there with him the whole time. And my daughter is just outside of this photo. And this is where I learned how to burn at Grandma's house. Grandpa would burn off the woods. They're both old Ozark hillbillies from central Missouri, south central Missouri, in the Ozarks, and they grew up burning the woods off. And my grandpa taught me how to do that as a young age. And when you're a kid, you're not thinking about, I gotta worry about the house. I gotta worry about, the fire crossing the fire line. As a kid, you're like, wow, fire, look at that fire. And you can't take your eyes off of it. And so these children are learning a lot about fire behavior when they're on the fire line. It's really exciting. They're really engrossed by it, and they're not distracted with all these things that us adults are distracted by. And I attribute my grandfather's taking me on burns as to why I'm able to do it as an adult with as much confidence as I have, because I learned this stuff at a very young age using my senses, not my mind. So I was able to really understand fire behavior and how it works before I had to start thinking about all the other rational things that come along with it. And it really helped me give me confidence and allows me to do this work, I feel like, a lot better. And I've noticed with people that didn't necessarily grow up with it, they just have a little bit of a different, how you say it, vibe. They have a little different vibe when it comes to burning. Okay, and then here's my daughter and my son helping me inspect the fire line. This is actually the day after the burn, and we just came back to make sure that nothing was smoking or at risk of crossing the fire line. And this is really good for them. And you can make it fun. I gave them radios, even though we never got out of eyesight with each other because they're so young. I made it fun for them, and they learned a lot about fire. And my daughter is going to school to be an ecologist now. And I didn't really push it on her because I've seen kids that were forced into the family business, and a lot of them didn't really like it, and I didn't want to do that to my kids. And I just tried to take them on enjoyable things like this, where they got to see really cool stuff. And there were a lot of great help. I'll just go back and say you can see this fire line. It's not that wide right here. This was a mild fire, and this was my first fire as a private consultant on private property. And so I was extra cautious. I didn't sleep for a week. I was so nervous. Um, but you can see we didn't put in that big of a fire line here, and it worked great. So there's nuance, and the more you learn about how fire operates and how it will behave when it comes up against these lines, every line is different, and so the more that you see, the more you learn, and you start to pick up on, okay, where do I need to be extra diligent? I could have made this fire line twice as wide. And then where can I relax? And so here I relaxed. I wasn't too worried about it crossing the line right here. You can see there's some fuel up here, and I blew out the line a lot wider right here by that fuel. So that's kind of the nuance that will really help. The standard checkbox of make it 6 feet, that works well on paper, but when you get out in the woods, um, it there's variability in how to apply that. Okay, so here's a fire line, and one thing I want to show you is I mark it out. So before we come out with a leaf blower, we mark out where the fire line goes. And then when the leaf blower comes out, you don't got to worry about where to go. That's already figured out. You can just get to work clearing the leaves out of the way. But then also during the fire, let's say that the fire is burning all the way around here. And if I see the fire over here, I don't have to think, is that on the wrong side of the line? Because I can see where the line is from a distance. So I know it's on the wrong side of the line. So I always want to mark them out. And I try to mark it to where when I'm standing at one marking, I can see the next one and I can see the previous one. So I want to space them close enough to where I can always see what's coming and what's behind me. Another thing about this is on a slope, and this is not ideal. We want to avoid this, but in some cases it's unavoidable. And in that case, we just make it extra wide. The risk here is, like, let's say this is a log. I'm not really sure what it is, but let's just say it's a log, and let's say it's burning, and then it rolls across the fire line. That's the hazard with putting these across the slope like this, is you can have rolling debris and take your fire across the line. And ideally, we could have used the creek, but I guarantee there's some good reason that we did not use this stretch of the creek. And I can't remember right now. Okay, so here's a fire line. You can see it's really thick, and so we had to do a lot of trimming of small saplings and shrubs, and possibly some bigger mid-story sized trees, so that we could get through here. And we cleaned this out so that we could drive an ATV on it. And you can see it's kind of going across the slope, but it's mostly going upslope. There's a worker right there. And you can see that the winds are shifty. Right here, the winds are going that way, and then up here, the winds are going this way. And when you're in the Ozarks on steep topography, that is a real issue. Shifting winds. And if you're burning a hot fire, shifting winds can change things really fast. So that's another bonus to doing mild intensity fires. The reason I started doing mild intensity fires as a contractor, the reason I started is because I no longer had all the staff and equipment that I had when I worked for the conservation department. And like I said, I didn't sleep for a week. And so I decided that I would do it when things were just a little bit wet in the soil and in the bigger logs on the ground, so that the fire wouldn't be as hot. And then after I came back and looked at the results, I was really pleased with the results. And so I continued to do that, and I continued to learn more and more about mild intensity fires, and just learned how to apply them better to tweak and get the best results possible. Hot fires tend to make everything the same, um, and they will cook all the soil bacteria and fungi as well, to where only the ones that can survive extreme heat are left. And that reduces biodiversity big time. And I really try to avoid the hot fires. I can't say it enough. Okay, this one's on a side slope too, but the burn is on the lower end of the slope, on the lower end of the fire line. So we don't have to worry about rolling embers coming across. You can see it's kind of thick, and we definitely cleaned it out. And this one's pretty wide. I would say for what's happening right here, this is a lot wider than we needed. But again, with shifting winds, you never know. And then also you have winds coming up the valley, uphill. Or they can be going downhill depending on the time of day. So we just made it extra wide here. And also it was extra wide so we can get the equipment through there. Okay, here's another burn line, and this is kind of a hot fire. And you can see this burn line isn't that thick, isn't that wide right here. And so we had to really slow down when we were going through here, making sure that it didn't cross. Okay, and this is a road. This is not a hand line. But the reason I wanted to show you is because this is a really good photo about why we don't leave logs right on the fire line. This worker had to stand here and babysit this. So we lost a worker basically. That worker couldn't move along down the line. They were dedicated to this. And in this photo, they're watching it. But most of the time, they were looking on the other side of the fire line to make sure that no embers were starting a fire on the other side. Really try to avoid this. The most common way is to take a leaf blower and blow all the leaves out from under it and around it so that the fire doesn't get up next to it. That's the most common way. But what I tell landowners now is, hey, have a good time about it. You can come out here and camp during the growing season and light this on fire and have you a nice little bonfire going and enjoy that work instead of actually making it labor type work. You can also hook a chain up to it and drag it out. There's lots of different ways that you can deal with them. But burning it during the growing season is probably my favorite. Blowing it out around with leaves is probably the most common. Okay, here's going through some thick woods, and you can see we trimmed out. There's a little stump right there. There's some other little stumps mixed in here. And this is kind of a mild area. It was burning really hot on the other side, but this is a north or east facing slope. And so the fire behavior got really quiet over here. And this is actually the intensity that I like. You can see the fire line turns here. Not really ideal, like I said before. But with a lower intensity fire, it's not an issue. Okay, I think this is probably the same fire. It's really thick woods. And I'm showing you this one because we put the handline going right through the middle of the tree. We just cleaned out on both sides of this tree, and that saved us, a couple seconds of having to clean out that area. We could have made it go straight through here, but that would have been a little more work to clean up versus this. So this is where efficiency really comes into play and can really speed things up for you. And just one of the little tricks right there. You have a big tree, you clean out around that tree. It looks like it might have been had some damage, and we wanted to protect that tree. So you can protect it by cutting it out of the fire unit or just blowing out around it, making it the fire line. Oop. Okay, here's another photo of my son with a small leaf blower, and he's at work helping me clean this fire line up. And then here's the leaf blower that I use. Back when I bought this was the biggest leaf blower, and it blows 200 miles an hour, brand new. I don't know if it's still that good or not, but it's still pretty good. Now they make a bigger leaf blower than this, and I haven't ran one of those. But ideally, we want two of these on the line. The first one is just scratching the line out like a foot trail, and then the second one is cleaning it up and making an actual hand line, fire line ready. If it was just one leaf blower, which in this case it was, it takes a lot longer to clean all this area out. But if you have two, you just cut the time in half. So you're going to get it done twice as fast when you have two leaf blowers, and that's what I prefer. And when I worked for the state and I had a lot of staff, sometimes we would put 3 or 4 leaf blowers. And you just spread them out a good distance. You don't want to be bumping up against each other. Okay, here's a fire line through an area with a lot of leaves. And these are some of my less enjoyable uh, areas to put fire lines in when we have a lot of leaves. And it was really windy when we blew this fire line. I remember this was a really windy spot up on top of the hill in the Ozarks. And when you are blowing them, the leaves are kind of kicking up a little bit, and then the wind just blows them away. So you want to do this work on a calm day. You don't want it to be windy. We drove a couple hours and we just didn't have a lot of control. And we did, and you can see like leaves are getting caught up in this brush here. This is not ideal at all. We made it extra wide. Ideally, you want to taper the leaves down. You don't want a big pile of them. There's a lot of air in there, so these leaves are going to burn quick, they're going to burn hot, and they're going to make high flame lengths. And if it's windy when you're burning, those flames are going to be burning, leaning over sideways. And that puts heat pressure on this side of the fire line. Ideally, you want to blow all the leaves outside of the burn unit. If it's not windy, you can do that. But if it's windy and it's blowing the leaves right back into the burn unit, you don't have a choice. You got to turn around and go with the wind. And so you end up with a bunch of fuel right on the fire line, making it really hot in the place where you don't want it to be hot. And you can see we cleaned this line out so we could drive a UTV or down it. This right here is a field edge and going into the woods. Okay, here's another nice wide line that we made that we cleaned out. And you can see we've cut out some bigger trees so we get equipment through here. And I can see that we cut them before we clean the leaves out. So if you clean the leaves out first, we could have cut these lower. But with all the leaves piled around it, we didn't know what kind of rocks were laying around here, and so we cut it above the leaf layer. That's not ideal. That's a trip hazard. That's a trip hazard. Nowadays, I would come and paint these with orange paint, just so when I'm working on the day of the fire line, I can see them a little better. And nowadays, I try to clean out the leaves before I do the cutting, so then I can cut it lower to the ground. Yeah, so here's a good example. We cut them before we clean the leaves, and so we've got all these trip hazards. And that makes it a little harder on the ATV to drive through as well. There's a couple things about this fire line that are worthy of talking about. One, just notice we're on the property boundary. There's purple paint there. But two, all these trees that we cut, some of them got piled up here. And we don't want to pile fuel along the fire line, either side, especially on the burn side. You can see we did a pretty good job of cleaning it out, but then somebody piled it up right here. And what we want to do is we want to drag it out and disperse it around. We don't want to put it in piles. We want to disperse it. So the little stuff you can just toss. The bigger stuff you got to actually drag it out. And you don't want to drag it to right here. You want to keep going another 20, 30, 50 feet. It just depends on how much fuel you got. And you can see we left some here that still needs to be cleaned up. This is not something that I want right along the fire line. I don't want any sticks or twigs laying right here because it'll hold fire and I'll have to stand here and wait for this guy to go out. So we just get rid of it, and that way we can just keep moving. We don't have to sit there and babysit that. Everything moves a little faster. You can see we made the fire line a little extra wide here, and it's probably to accommodate for that, all this fuel loading and the property boundary. Okay, so here's a fire in action. We have the fence line, property boundary, and we made it extra wide because of the property boundary. We also made it extra wide because this is a backing fire. This is where we started the fire, somewhere in this area. And so the flames are pushing against the line. And so we wanted to make it extra wide to make sure that these flames can't cross. Okay, this one is a really nice fire line. It's pretty wide. Here's a tree that is hollow at the base, and it can catch fire and go up into the tree. And so you can see kind of that we cleaned out with the leaf blower around the tree. We blew all the leaves out around it so that the fire can't touch the tree. Another thing is the fire line turns here. It's got this little curve. and that's not ideal. It's going to happen, it's unavoidable, but if we can, we try to avoid this because this point right here is getting heat from here and it's getting heat from here. So it's getting heat on two sides, and we don't want that. That's just another little risk. In the grand scheme of things, it's pretty small, but that's a small thing that we might be able to avoid. And if we can, we do. It just speeds things up and makes it a lot safer. Okay, here's a burn line where we're lighting a head fire. So on this one, the fire is moving away from the fire line. And you can see we didn't need to do as good of a job on this stretch of fire line. It's still really good, I think, but it's just not as good as that last one you saw, right? Here's a fire line that I put in by myself. And this image is a little distorted. You can tell the drip torch, it's distorted. And so in reality, this fire line is a little wider than it looks. Not much. But because I did this on my own, this was about a 10-acre burn unit. I didn't have the time. Actually, I put this burn line in the morning and then I burned it going into sunset. And you can see it's getting a little hot in areas. It's getting a lot hotter than I thought it would, actually. But I was by myself and I didn't take the time. It would have taken me, you know, 2 days to put in this fire line. Maybe not that much. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it would have taken me a lot longer. And so when I'm by myself, it may not be as wide in the places where it's not needed. And this was where I was lighting a head fire. The fire was moving away. I knew that would be the case. And so I didn't spend a lot of time making this fire line wide. Another thing about this burn unit is it had had an aggressive, heavy timber sale in it, like 5 or 10 years prior, and there was a lot of big logs and treetops out laying around in the woods, and that's where I spent most of my time preparing fireline around those logs. And so I saved time by not working too much on this stretch. Okay, here's a mild fire. This is actually the same burn unit, just much lower on the landscape. And this is a protected site, so it's north facing at the lower slope, and you can see it just doesn't burn as good. And so I didn't have to worry about putting in a really nice wide fire line here. I knew it wasn't going to burn good. You could see here it actually put itself out. So I don't waste a lot of time. And then once I got up here, I put in a lot more time. Okay, so here's a hollow tree close to the fire line. We mark these trees so that when we come out, well, when I'm putting in the fire line, I'll look for these trees and I'll mark them. And then when I come out with a leaf blower, I'll blow out around it and I'll look around more and see if any more need to be marked. And then the morning of the burn, before we light, I'll go through and I'll look for any more, and I'll have a leaf blower on me. I'll be running the fire line, cleaning it off. I'll look for these as well, see if I missed any. So I do 3 checks for these trees, a minimum of 3 checks. And the reason I do is because these are a big risk. This can catch fire and the fire goes up it and it starts throwing embers out. We call it a chimney tree. It throws embers out, and let's say the fire line is right here and it's throwing embers out across the fire line. Big risk. Also, if this burns out and it falls, it could fall across the fire line and then it'll burn across, and now we have a fire escape. Another big risk. So those are 2 big reasons why we want to uh, eliminate these trees from getting burned. We want to preserve them. But as an ecologist, another reason is this is high value wildlife habitat. The bigger it gets as it is hollow, the more wildlife value it gets. So the wildlife value grows as the tree grows. And then once the tree falls over, it's a hollow log on the ground, great wildlife habitat again. So we have decades of great wildlife habitat that can be lost in these controlled burns. And so I really try to preserve these. I want to keep these trees around for ecological reasons, um, and also logs on the ground. I want to keep logs on the ground. So whenever we do controlled burns, especially hot controlled burns, we lose these. And I'm not a fan of that at all. I think we need to be trying to preserve these. And this is one of the reasons I prefer to do small burn units. When you get up to a 100-acre burn unit, you're not going to be able to go through the entire 100 acres and find these trees and find the logs. You'll have to do weeks of prep time out there making sure that you've protected all these. But if it's only 5 acres or 10 acres, you can take care of protecting these pretty easy. It doesn't take near as much time. And you can preserve all these hollow trees and logs that are on the ground. I'll be coming with a leaf blower and I'll be cleaning out around this, and I'll show a picture. Okay, here's the fire line. Before I've taken the leaf blower, I'm marking it out. So when I'm walking through and I'm trying to figure out where to put the fire line, do I put it over here? Do I put it over here? Or should I go all the way up there? Or should I go all the way downhill? Um, this is where experience really pays off, knowing exactly where to put it. It can be a big difference. Up here it's going to burn hotter, down there it's going to burn cooler, and I need to get from up there to down there. How do I do it? Um, you can see I'm using this rock right here as part of the fire line. And I'll go through and I'll mark it, and I take my time. I make sure that I'm not going to be in a hurry that day so that I can slow down and do a good job. And then I will rewalk it going the other direction so that I see everything from the other direction. And when I'm rewalking it, oftentimes there'll be an area where I'm like, ooh, I did not pick the best spot. And I didn't realize it until I walked it again. And then when I come out with a leaf blower, I might realize, yeah, I think it would be best if I move over here 10 feet or 20 feet. And so this is this is where a lot of the safety comes into play, and you want to just make sure that you slow down and do a good job. And as you get more experience, not just putting in Fireline, but actually doing the burn and seeing how it behaves, you'll learn, oh yeah, that's a little too risky and I need to move it from that. And I've been there. I've built fire lines and I thought, oh yeah, this is great. And then the fire comes and I have to stand there for 10, 15, 20 minutes because I didn't put it in the best place. This is the same photo. Okay, and then here we've got this wide open woods. You can see there's a line flag here, and there's flag down there. These wide open woods are my favorite to put Fireline in. It's so easy. As long as it's not windy, this is super easy compared to this thick stuff over here. You got to fight your way, do a lot of cutting, slow down a lot, and because you're doing all that cutting, now you've got all this fuel on the ground. So now you've got to clean all this fuel away. So if you can, let's say you want to burn all this, you can just move out into this wide open timber a little bit and put your fire line in here. That's working smart. That's working efficient. That's going to save you a ton of work and a ton of time. Okay, here we put the fire line into a creek. This is ice, and we don't have to worry about the fire crossing that. So I love to find water that I can connect the fire line to if possible. And you can see the fire line. We just crossed the creek right here. A lot of times we'll use the actual creek as the fire line. But people make the mistake of thinking that they don't need to clean it out. But look, there's lots of leaves in the creek. And I've seen fire cross the creek because it didn't get cleaned out good enough. So even though you're using a stream as a fire line, you've got to come through and clean it out. Okay, here's a fire line that's going through a bit of a cedar patch, and we've got this grass. This is called, this is what I call poverty grass. Grows on poor soils in Missouri. And we got bare soil here, but then we don't have bare soil across here. And so whenever we burn through here, we'd have to slow down and babysit this. And we'd either have a water unit that we could spray it down, or we have a flapper. And the flapper is really good for putting out grass fires. It smothers it. Another trick is you can come out during the growing season or after you put the fire line in. Of course, after you put the fire line in, you can come out when it's a little wet with a flame weeder and burn this off. Everything's wet. You don't got to worry about starting a wildfire. Your fire's going to put itself out, and that flame weeder, 500 BTUs or whatever, is going to get rid of all this fuel for you. So that's a nice little trick that can be used. And this fire line has definitely been cleaned out so we can use an ATV on it. Okay, this is the same patch of fire line. And yeah, just another photo. So here's a fire line going up the hill. You can see we've got it fairly wide here, and we're at the lower slope, and so the fire is really mild, really mild. Okay, so here are two shagbark hickories that are hollow at the base. So super easy for fire to get up in there and to turn this into a chimney or to cook it out and have it fall across the fire line. Both of them are leaning pretty hard. So you can see we just cleaned out all the leaves around them and we don't have to worry about fire getting in there. And with a deer stand, you don't have to move those. You can just clean out around them the same way. If this was a wooden deer stand, we might clean out a little more, and we might have some water here so that when the fire is passing, we can just spray the wood down really quick, or we can spray the fire down as it gets close to it and protect that. But you don't have to take down deer stands if you protect them. If you don't spray out, or if you don't clear the leaves out around it, you're going to damage this possibly. So you want to clean out around them, or of course you can take them down if you feel like necessary. Okay, here's a dead tree that we cleaned out around. It's close to the fire line, and we wanted to preserve it. Another thing we could have done is we could have cut this tree down and gotten the fuel, bucked it up, and gotten all the logs out of the fire unit. This tree is small enough that we could have done that. But we chose, most of the time, I just blow out around them. It's the easiest way. Okay, here we are burning. This is not the property boundary. It's just an old fence from when this was a more active farm. And that fence is kind of a hazard, but it worked really well for us in this case. And we just cleaned out on on this side of the fence so that we could burn the other side. Sometimes you'll have a neighbor that is agreeable, and the neighbor will let you do this. And maybe you can even get the neighbor out to help you. And it's really great when you have a neighbor who wants to burn as well, and you can just forget about this and you can just back off and use better burn lines like roads or fields or something. It's really great when we can get neighbors to cooperate on these burns because it can uh, help us put the fire line in a better place, because property boundaries don't always make good fire lines. Okay, here's a short video showing burn on a fire line. And this is a head fire. It's moving away from the burn line. You can hear a leaf blower in the background. And you can see we've cleaned it out really well because we can have stuff that rolls downhill. And so we gave it extra distance here. Here's hollow trees. What happens to them when they burn? These trees are definitely going to fall over, and they possibly be just a pile of ash in the morning. Big logs like this can hold flame overnight, and tomorrow, if it's windy and the relative humidity gets low, they will start fire again. So you can come out at like 10, 11 in the morning and they'll be smoking. You'll see little patches of smoke coming out of these logs. And then by 1 or 2 o'clock, there'll be flames as the relative humidity goes lower. Okay, here I am showing you how to use a leaf blower real quick. 200-mile-per-hour winds is adequate, I think. The bigger ones would probably be nicer for sure. I'm working by myself here, so it's taking me a little longer. And I'm also holding the camera and focused on that part too. And then I'm going to go ahead and clean out around the cedar tree to protect it. It's not hollow and it doesn't need protecting. I just wanted to show for this video and protect the tree a little bit. Here's a really mild fire. We're getting down on the lower slope on a protected slope, north or east facing. And you can see it's a backing fire. It's pushing across the fire line. I don't know why I'm filming the sky. I guess the smoke was catching my attention. And it's kind of boring, right? And that's what we want. We want a boring fire. You can see the fire line is a good distance here. And this is a little more mild than I like. I like it to be a little hotter than this. But again, when we're in hill country, there's going to be some sites that burn hot, some sites that don't burn hot. And this is a protected site that doesn't burn hot. So I could come back on a different day when it burns a little hotter. I've got good fire line, and this is going to back in here and make my fire line even bigger. So I can come back and reburn this if needed. So it's not a total loss whenever you have areas that don't burn. Um, it just all depends. Okay, and here's a photo showing how we connected the burn line to a lake. So the burn line here is an actual trail that the landowner uses to access their woods from their cabin. And we were using the trail as a burn line, and we wanted to connect it with the lake, so we just put in a short distance of handline. So you can use handline for really short distances to connect other types of handline. And it's really easy. It's not that much work. You can pull your truck right up, get out with your tools. If you got one or two people, it's still going to go pretty fast. And it's just a way to use different kinds of burn lines working together to get the ideal burn unit that you want. And you can see we've got some fuel buildup right here. And this worker is just sitting here babysitting this, making sure. This worker is just sitting here watching this, making sure that it's not going to be a problem. Okay, here's a stump, and we cleaned out around it to make sure that stump doesn't catch fire. It can hold fire overnight just below the ground, and then the next day it can kick up, and it's right near the fire line. So we cleaned out around that to make sure that tomorrow it's not going to be burning. Okay, this is an old trail that we cleaned off, and then here's a log, a big log, a treetop from a really old harvest. And we cleaned out around it, you can see. We've got a backing fire, kind of shifty winds. You can see right there, it just kicked up a bunch of embers. And so it's good that we have a good fire line here. It doesn't look like it's too good right there though. But this is on a ridge top where it's pretty windy, and so we might have cleaned this off and all the leaves just got blown on it today. So we always have a leaf blower on the fire line during the burn, just in case this happens. Okay, here's a fire line that we cut into the woods so that we could drive an ATV on it. And right there, you can see we cleaned out around this log. We could have drug it out. This one's pretty small, and we definitely could have drug it out. But I'm guessing that we had a lot of these, and so the workers, we all just got tired, and we're like, screw it, I'm just gonna blow around it. I don't feel like dragging another log. And then we've got a dead tree here, and I'm on the fire line, so we just extended the fire line out to protect these guys and this one. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead here to avoid a worker trying to cut everybody's faces out. You can see we've got lots of little smokies right on the fire line. And, you know, part of cleaning the fire line is somebody's walking through here picking these up and throwing them across. But when you've got a big burn unit, you're going to miss a lot. And this photo really shows. And so if we had shifty winds, or if these hold fire overnight and the wind changes to the other direction, these can be a big problem. So that's what this worker up here is doing. Um, I'm with the drip torch. That's the person I just skipped the video on. And they got the drip torch. And then me and this person are behind the drip torch waiting, making sure that the fire's not going to cross. And then there's a person behind here that is waiting for these to stop smoking. And you can see the fire has moved a long distance. And when we're doing these backing fires, we're basically making the fire line longer, bigger. So here the fire line, let's just say, is 8 feet wide. And here it's 58 feet wide. And here it's 40 feet. And there it's back to 8 feet. Okay. So this is that same fire line. I've just moved up. Here's those logs I was just showing that we cleaned out around. We cut this tree down and we dragged it across the burn line. And it's a really good shot of how the burn line gets wider. Okay, and then here's a shot I took a break and took a photo. And I'm cutting the fire line through here. And here's this log, and instead of coming out here with a chainsaw, going back to the truck and getting the chainsaw, I just took the leaf blower and cleaned out around it, so I don't got to worry about it. It's another nice hand line through the woods. You can see it's a little curvy here, and I made it a little extra wide. Okay, here I am standing on a county road, and this is the right of way. It's a little grassy, and then when you get in the woods, the grass disappears. So I got good burn line. Here, I took the leaf blower and I blew all the leaves out of the grass and tried to get a lot of the dead grass out, the dead thatch. Um, but to save time, that's all the prep work that I did. You can see I made it extra wide. I could have, come out with a lawnmower or weed eater or a flame weeder during wet days and made this bare soil. But it's such a short stretch, it was actually easier for me to just light it on fire and to babysit it. So you can see the fire is forming two fronts. There's this backing fire here that's backing into this, and then we've got this head fire that's moving away. So once these two separate a good distance, and let's say it gets right here, I can just take a water, or I can take a flapper and I can put that out and done. Okay, here's a tree that's hollow at the base, showing you how I cleaned out around it. This is the dead tree. And this was in the middle of the burn unit. It was a 5-acre burn unit. And so I just went and found all the dead trees or trees with hollowness at the base, and I marked them and I cleaned out around all of them. Again, we can do that on the little burn units. We can't do it on the big ones. We can, but it's just a lot more time. And then here's another dead tree inside the burn unit that I cleaned around. And that's it. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something that was helpful. If you did, please hit those subscribe, like, and share buttons. And thanks a lot. Have a great day.